So in level 2 yoga today, we are going to explore our myofascial web. And I'm going to read to you out of The Endless Web, Fascial Anatomy and Physical Reality by these two people. And they are a PhD and a DO, but they are also experienced rolfers. And so a lot of this information comes from that background. The muscle bone concept, presented in standard anatomical descriptions, gives a purely mechanical model to movement. It separates movement into discrete functions, failing to give a picture of the seamless integration seen in a living body. When one part moves, the body as a whole responds. Functionally, the only tissue that can mediate such responsiveness is the connective tissue. This is the heart of the concept that we are proposing in this book, including an understanding of fascia, connective tissue, in the evaluation of movement, gives a more accurate picture of the physical reality of the body. What is interested us in the body is the body's apparently great capacity for structural change at any age. We are confronted daily with the very wide deviations from standard anatomical description in people who function perfectly well. People look very different, even though they are made of the same component parts. We have come to the working hypothesis that the variability is a function of certain properties of connective tissue, that best illustrated by its development from the embryonic mesoderm into mature tissue. Our ideas and concepts have come directly from our experience as Rolfers, a combined total of 45 years. Even when the aim of paying attention to specific body parts is to improve the physical self, the focus is on one thing at a time. A man may do push-ups and lift weights to broaden shoulders. Someone else, this is a little sexist, may do leg lifts to slim down their legs. Yet those hips and those shoulders are an expression of everything else in that body. They're the result not only of its structure, but also the reciprocity of how everything else in the body is used. This kind of connectedness is easy to understand in impact injuries. When I stub my toe, the injury resonates through the whole body, all the way to my head, whether I notice it or not. The pain in the toe makes me not want to stand on it, and my whole body shifts in order to avoid feeling the weight on the painful part. I walk lightly on the side that hurts, more heavily on the side that doesn't. If I'm not aware of doing this, my tendency is to keep the shift in weight to one side long after the toe is no longer painful. The painful side has contracted away from the source of the pain and is shortened. This is especially true if the toe is broken and the pain has persisted for a long time. The compensation, the shortening, becomes a permanent part of our structure. Visualize a net curtain or a hammock. When a hook pulls on one part of the web, the resulting distortion influences every part of the system to some degree. As we look at connective tissue, its highly structured directional orientation is suggestive of this kind of information system. By tracing connective tissue's origin, function, and appearance in the body, this book shows how myofascia creates an informational whole in a living organism. It is the unifying factor in the movement system we call the body. Thickening, snagging, or holding any part of the connective tissue web results in a general heaviness of movement. What at first is a way to protect a part of the body, particularly a part that hurts, eventually results in a loss of fluidity through the entire body. Perhaps the best image of fluidity is a tiger on its way through the forest, not making a sound as it moves across the leaves and twigs and past the bushes. Its knee bone is connected to its arm bone without restriction, allowing a spring-like action among all the parts of the body. Our dream is to have all of us moving sure-footedly through the forest. Let's tune in to our breath. Feel where the breath moves the body. Feel the interconnectedness of the nasal passages to the lungs, to the diaphragm. Feel how the ribs separate one away from another. How the spine lengthens and relaxes. Notice if there's movement in your abdomen. If there's movement in your waistline. In the low back. Similarly to injuring a body part and shifting the body to avoid pain, we may have learned breathing strategies early in life that inhibit the movement of fascial tissue throughout the torso. In our pranayama practice in yoga, we can soften back into a natural breath. The breath we notice when we see a baby sleeping and the whole body pulses. We can invite that back into our experience. Invite a softening on the exhales and an expansion on the inhales. And imagine this intricate web of your fascia like lace, embroidered through the body, moving in the gentle breeze of your breath. Let there be an elasticity to the strands, to the sutras. Feel down into the bowl of your pelvis. The pelvic floor, when we're relaxed, should move with your breathing diaphragm, descending on the inhale and gently ascending on the exhale. This can't happen if we hold the belly or the hip bones rigid. So we feel into softening the breathing diaphragm, softening the pelvic floor, allowing for the fascia of the abdomen, the pelvis to move. With the breath, we begin to honor the elasticity of who we are. And as we breathe, then we also acknowledge the parts of ourselves that have been injured, that have had surgeries, that may have developed holding patterns that influence the entire web. And without demanding change, with compassion and kindness, we acknowledge these parts of ourselves. And as we soften our awareness with compassion, perhaps we can also soften the tissue that's harbored the injury or the surgery. We acknowledge this tissue as living, as intelligent, as part of our ability to heal. We acknowledge this tissue as an equal part of who we are. And we let go of this notion that our intelligence is harbored in the head or even in the heart, that exists throughout this web of our being, where consciousness and embodiment merge. And as we turn our gaze humbly inward today, I invite you to practice Svadhyaya, self-study, ahimsa, nonviolence, santosha, contentment, and tapas, this burning desire to continue to grow, learn, and transform through growing consciousness inside our embodiment. Let's inhale our hands to our hearts. May we be fully present in the living tissues of our bodies today. Namaste. Okay, let's come to standing. And let's let ourselves begin to flow. And feel for your shoulders, the bones of your shoulders lightly moving inside this myofascial matrix at the end of the diagonal across from the opposite toe. Allow a softening and an opening to this fluid tissue that surrounds the head of your arm bone and the shoulder blade, that surrounds the collarbones and the ribs, so that these bones can float. And then let the arms float up as if they are floating on this watery tissue, like driftwood. Let the bones float inside this myofascial fabric, this watery suit. This may help us let go the past restrictions in the tissue, as will movement and warmth in the tissue itself. Let your feet land and your arms circle skyward and circle earthward, and feel the stretch and the release of the fabric and how it ripples the movement through the body. Notice if there are any snags or catches. And if there are, can you go easier on those places? Because if we force the fascial tissue, we'll harden it. And let your arms release towards earth and take them the other way. And notice, is there stiffness in one side of the spine, one shoulder, in the upper spine or the lower, in the connections between ribs and spine in the back body? And this time when your arms reach skyward, reach the left arm away from the left foot, and then switch, reaching the right arm. And take the stretch slowly enough that you feel the stretch ripple through the tissue from foot up through the body to fingertips. And let your consciousness expand outside of the area that draws your attention most, so that you feel the interconnectedness of the stretch to any tight places. Stay with it. The practice of pratyahara, turning your gaze inward. Learning to not overdo the stretch and harden the tissue. And release your arms down and circle one shoulder up and back and then the other, and let yourself sway across the body. And really think of this as like a loose, warm clay that you're moving around with your bones, the spacers inside of you, to massage the fabric more open. Like you're creating a really comfortable pair of jeans by wearing them for 10 years. Take your elbows around. Kids don't have that experience anymore because they can buy their jeans already worn in and comfortable, right? But don't you remember that? How they used to be so kind of tight and stiff, and then you'd wear them and wear them and wash them and wash them, and then they'd get soft. So we want to open the tissue with gentle stretching, gentle tumbling. And then release your arms down, lift them up, palms together. Inhale, open across the heart. Exhale, pinkies together, cat curl the spine and pause. Really release the tailbone down. Try to release the tissue in the low back for a few breaths. Really let go the pelvis, let it hang. Let that tissue around the lumbar vertebrae open. Notice you can use gravity to help you stretch. And then inhale, open again. Stretch from palm to palm across the arms, the heart, the front chest, and breathe a lift into the sternum. And relax around the neck and shoulders as you exhale. And feel, where is the fabric being stretched? Notice, is there space for my arm bones? Can I change the arm's position a little bit and create more space in the shoulder girdle? Arm alignment. And exhale, pinkies together again. And inhale, open the heart, lift the heart, step your feet wide, and continue moving to gently stretch this fabric open. Not going too far into a place where you're tightening and the tissue will respond by stiffening, keeping it loose and fluid. inviting that whole body fabric to work together so we can be like the tiger walking silently in the woods. Let's open the arms and reach the hands skyward. Stretch the fingers open. Let the bones of the hands stretch out in the fabric. And then fist the hands. Draw the elbows down, bend the knees, straighten the legs, reach the hands, reach the fingers out away from the palm, and then come back in. And don't underestimate the importance of stretching these bones in the hands out into the fabric of the hands, because we want any stagnant energy stuck in the knuckles to move. We want space inside the knuckle for healthy fluid flow. So we stretch even the bones of our fingertips away from the bones of our middle fingers. We stretch the bones of the palms away from the wrist, away from each other. But we don't overdo that stretch. It's not 100%. Meanwhile, we're warming up the quads, the bigger muscle groups in the body, heating up the tissue. Coming back down, release the arms, turn the left foot out, right heel back, and come into Virabhadrasana 2. Float the arms, palms up, inhaling, and exhale, and come back to your three-dimensional breath. Come back to the invitation of opening the tissue from inside the body. And if this circling of the arms hurts your shoulders, then find a gentle circle that's okay, that still moves and ripples the water in the tissue of the myofascial fabric. Really feel for a three-dimensional breath that expands the back body. And bring your left hand to your femur and your right arm alongside the ear and stretch through the bones. Can you stretch from shoulder to shoulder, opening the heart? And then notice, oh, did I bring stiffness? I did, into my upper collar. So now I'm going to release the back of the collar. Fluid breath around the bones before we try to come any lower. And then you may come lower, but you check in again. Have I compressed around the bones? If I have, I'm going to come back up. And we bow the heart towards earth, and we lift the heart towards the heavens. And we allow for a different type of movement through the body. Fluid. Feel for the movement of the ribs away from the spine as you bow towards earth. Keep that space as you lift the ribs and lift the heart back up towards sky. And lifting up, float up. And turn the palms skyward and lift, opening across the collar. Fluid breath. Now, as you're here, feel down into the pelvis. Can you take the femur bones a little out of the pelvis, down towards your roots at your feet? Can you create some space inside the pelvis by moving the femur bones with your consciousness? Still keeping it steady, keeping it integrated. Can you create space? And again, space around the collar and in the bones of the neck as they rise towards the skull. Three-dimensional breath. And we exhale, floating up, straightening the front leg. We pull the femur bone back away from the tibia a little bit. We don't hyperextend and pinch the front of the knee. Same with the back leg. We make sure we're not throwing the knee back. We create space in the joint of the knee itself, in the whole fabric of the body. We create space between both sides of the vertebrae, so we don't come into a falling, collapsing position. We stay long underneath the spine And exhale up, lifting the front hand. We float into dancing triangle. Again, releasing the back of the collar. We look for space throughout the fabric around the bone spacers. And float back up, turning the left leg in and the right leg out. We bend into Virabhadrasana 2. And this time, take the left arm around towards the right and exhale it back around. Feel a gentle twisting in the fabric. Notice as you bring the left hand forward, is there any tightness that comes between your inner thigh and your lumbar spine? If there is, then that shows you that the psoas pathway has a little tightness in it, fluid breath, and this may be an area we want to work to expand. And then coming back to Vira 2, relax the arm bones as if they could float out of the shoulders and towards the fingers. Relax the bones of the hands, let them float. And then bring right hand to femur, left arm alongside the ear, and broaden across your collarbones. Feel for space in between the cervical spine of the neck, and exhale, heart towards the earth. And inhale, heart towards the sky. And make the movement slow so you can feel for how to create space around the bones. You may come lower, but you don't do that out of a sense of obligation. You do that if it feels like it provides more opening in the body, not more compression. We wake to this intelligent tissue and what it is telling us about its experience of our chosen movement. And coming back up, spread the colors wide, heart lifted. And float, rooting from the pelvis down into your dancing warrior. Keep the arm bones spacious, the ribs spacious. Don't collapse the left back ribs. But if we try to lengthen too much, we'll stiffen the tissue. So there's a balance between finding easy length and deep relaxation and opening in the fluid tissues of our body. Find a place where you feel like you can rest on the breath and have the breath fill and reshape the pose. And relax the pose. And as you rest here, feel your bones as spacers of this fabric. Exhaling, straighten the front leg and cartwheel into your high trikonasana. Again, feel for space around each lumbar vertebrae. Space between the ribs and the thoracic vertebrae. Space between the vertebrae of the neck. Three-dimensional breath. Feel how you can create strength. No matter how far down you go, you can create strength. But if you go too far down, you may have a pinching in a knee joint or a hip joint or a vertebrae to vertebrae. Float back up, letting the bones float. Come into your dancing triangle. Fluid breath. Doesn't matter how deep you are in the pose. It matters that you create a spaciousness, that you're getting a little stretch, you're getting a little strengthening action. Do what's right for your unique body. And exhale, back up, turning the right foot in. Step together and pause in mountain pose. Let the bones float on the breath. Step the left foot forward and the right foot back, rock step. Let the feet land and the arms rise like wings, and bring the left arm across towards the right hip, right hand behind you. And then inhale back, open forward, and exhale gently towards the left. Don't twist so far that you're causing major compression. See if you can have one vertebrae float off the other. They will come closer together, especially as you twist towards the left leg. But feel for creating some space and some twist to hydrate the discs between the vertebrae, to hydrate the myofascial sleeve around the spine. Notice how as you twist left, you're also squeezing the intestines a little bit. The liver, the stomach move, even the kidneys in the back body. And come back forward. Bend into the front knee, sweep your arms down, and inhale, lift them skyward, Virabhadrasana 1. Open into your cactus position and pause. Three-dimensional breath, broadening the rib cage. Take elbow away from elbow. Create space around the humerus bone. And then today, exhale forward, bringing pinky towards pinky for humble warrior. Pause and root the heel and extend through the crown, releasing the shoulders, lengthening the neck. Can you maintain that length as you root the feet and lift up the back of the spine and open? And exhale forward. Use strength under the navel to keep lengthening the front spine. Let the goal not be how deep can I get into the pose, but how conscious can I get in creating space around my bones. And reach the hands as you root the feet. And exhale. Step the feet back together, right foot forward, left foot back, rock step. Inhale, float your arms. Exhale, right hand to left hip. Inhale, center. Left hand to right hip. Inhale, center. And fluid breath, fluid motion. As you twist right, notice, is there a stretch down the back leg, through the pelvis? Feel into what the fabric of the body is telling you. We're building connection with our own consciousness. Come back to center. Bend the front knee and let your arms sweep down and lift skyward. Bring them open into your cactus position and pause. Feel into the inner and outer heel of the back foot, making sure you're not collapsing into the inner arch, which will overstrain the inner line from inner arch all the way up the right side, or the left side of the spine. Create space along the spine. That may take strength in the front abdomen. Exhale, pinkies together, bowing forward. Inhale, stretching open across the heart. And we exhale, and we inhale. Fluid breath, inviting the bones to float in our myofascial fabric. We don't pinch inside the shoulder joint. Now this time, float, pinkies towards earth, forearms together, and pause. Grounding through the four corners of your feet. Rooting both heel circumferences. Big toe ball mounts, pinky toe ball mounts. Feel up into the riverbanks at your pelvis, a gently lifting pelvic floor on the exhale, and open the arms, lengthening your spine into Virabhadrasana 1. Draw energy up the front of the spine. Create space between the back of the vertebrae. And exhale. Step the feet together and pause in your mountain pose. Invite the bones of your body to float. Fluid breath. Let's reach for our blocks and bring them forward between our feet. If any of you need to sit in Uttanasana Konasana for this, you can. Otherwise, we're going into Prasarita Padottanasana. Legs wide, heels a little farther out than the toe box, so you have a tiny bit of a turn in of the feet. That'll help you take your inner thighs back. Hands to the pelvic rim. Bring the thumbs towards your sacrum, elbows back, and root down into the four corners of the feet. Lift your toes, lift your arches. Relax your toes. Lift and lengthen through the spine. Gentle lift to the pelvic floor on an exhale. Lengthen the spine. Lengthen the cervical spine out of the collar. Lift the heart. You can use your hands grounding on the crest of your pelvis to help you lengthen the side bodies. Lengthen the whole fabric. And then exhale, draw your inner thighs back and widen them apart as you hinge forward, hands to your blocks. And inhale, a gentle cow. And exhale, a gentle cat. And let the movement be gentle as you take pelvis away from head and you undulate the spine. Again, the whole focus of class today is to feel into the myofascial fabric and notice, are there places where I have snags, where the tissue is catching? And can I invite fluidity into those spaces, not by stretching too hard, but by moving with conscious awareness and inviting that fluidity into those areas? So for me with scoliosis, I feel this movement mainly in my low back where my extra lumbar vertebrae is. And I focus on, as I take my tailbone down, really creating space around the vertebrae. But some of you may have shoulder issues. You may feel a tightness around one shoulder. You may play with where to put the blocks. You may put your hands a little wider, create space around the bones at the collarbones or the shoulder. Some of you will stay with that, and some of you can take the blocks lower and farther forward into a wide-legged downward dog. Even here, you could continue to undulate the pelvis and the spine a little bit if that doesn't feel like a strain on your hamstrings. Fluid breath. And we have to begin to differentiate in our own bodies what is good for us because we're each unique. I want to draw my right sit bone back a little bit to stretch my right side body because of my scoliosis curves. I want you to feel into your own unique body and play with taking one sit bone back, the other sit bone back, swaying the spine a little. Play with finding space, creating space along the sleeve of muscles of the spine, in the hips, in the shoulders. Honor your unique body. What is the tissue telling you? Fluid, three-dimensional breath. And draw the blocks back under your face. Place the right hand on the block and float your left wing skyward. Find the left shoulder blades strong and integrated on the rib cage. Root into the right hand and expand across your wings if you want to come into the twist. Draw the right sit bone back away from the lifting left arm. And breathe in to the stretch you're creating through the myofascial web. Remember, you don't have to go all the way. You go into your body to where you feel a good stretch, but not a stiffening. And then you feel for the three-dimensional breath washing through the lines of the embroidery. And we exhale the left wing down, root that hand, and lift the right wing. Make sure you're not hyperextending in the standing elbow. Create space between the radius and the humerus. Fluid breath. Ah, fluid breath. Is your shoulder girdle bunching up around the neck? Can you move in a way that releases the neck? Breathe into the tissue inside the abdomen. Move that tissue around the intestines, the kidneys, all the other organs. And release the lifted right hand. And float back up and step your feet in and pause in mountain pose. Closing the eyes on the front of your head, open the eyes on the back of your head. Breathe space between your bones. Notice if you hold your hands tense, try to release your elbows, your shoulders, your buttocks, your belly. We all hold tension in different parts of the fabric. And let your hands, palms up, slide past your hips and lift the heart. Exhale, roll yourself over, hands back to back. And inhale, lift the heart. And exhale, roll fluidly over. And feel for the bones moving in the myofascial web. Let them be like driftwood inside water, or even fish inside the wave. Fluid breath. The work of yoga in asana is to help us open the body enough it can sit comfortably for meditation. Let this be a moving meditation. And inhale. Come back to stillness. Okay, let's come into some sun salutations. Please bring your chair to the front of the mat or your blocks, whichever you prefer. I'll use blocks today. And as you're ready, standing in front of the blocks, we'll inhale just a few sun breaths, lifting the arms, rooting the feet, stretching the spine, exhaling the hands through the center channel. Gather in earth energy, sky energy. Allow yourself to feel rooted but spacious. In this time, when your hands come to your heart, bend your knees, Utkatasana, fierce pose. And with fierce determination, feel into creating space inside the pose. Three-dimensional breath. Space under the arches of the feet. And release your fingertips to your props and inhale. Float the spine long into a bit of a cow pose. And exhale, bending the knees. Float the navel skyward, the spine skyward into a hissing cat. And inhale. And exhale. If it's too much to be bent down to the props, you can place your hands on your femur bones. Wherever is best for you to feel the undulation of the spine. Come back into your neutral and step your left foot back. Pause in your high lunge. Lengthen from heel to crown. Hug in the banks of your river so that you can create even space along the spine. And then bend your back knee, let it move towards the floor, and then lift it up into your high lunge. And just bend and lift. Stay aware of the curves of your spine. Try to keep them in neutral. And lift back up, lower the back heel, and inhale, float your arms up, Virabhadrasana 1, and exhale, float forward, um, humble warrior, inhaling and exhaling. Feel for creating space inside the fabric. Coming up to Virabhadrasana 1, exhale your hands to your hearts and twist towards the back leg hip and twist forward towards the front knee and around towards that side. And exhale. Just let your spine revolve. Try to keep tracking the front knee forward over the second metatarsal, even though you will feel the femur bones, the hips shift. You may even feel a shift in the fabric of the feet, the calves. And feel for it, how it's all interconnected, this elastic embroidery that holds us together. Come back to center and release your hands to your props. Take your blocks to medium, step back plank. Feel into a strong plank even as you rock over your toes, not rocking the wrist forward of 90 degrees. Those of you who can't be on wrists, I guess you could come down to forearms. Fluid breath. And float the hips back, downward dog. Bend your knees in towards your armpits. Take the pelvis and tailbone back, lengthening the spine. Create space between the ribs and the vertebrae. And then walk your dog one knee at a time. Stretching and feeling into the movement of the fabric. Allowing for opening, for space, for balance and harmony. And then coming back to neutral. Lift your left leg and step it forward. Coming up into high lunge. We'll bend the back knee and lift it. Notice what this motion tells you about the fabric in your body. We're moving through pulsations in this class today, through the spanda in yoga, to wake up our consciousness. Come back up, lowering the back heel. Inhale, float the arms up. Keep that space between the vertebrae. Exhale, float forward, humble warrior. Inhale and exhale. Try to have the bones floating inside this matrix, this mother sea. And this time when your hands come up, bring your hands to your heart and twist towards the back hip, keeping the left knee aligned over the second metatarsal. Inhaling forward and around. Notice what you're feeling in the fabric of the matrix. Where might you need stretching and opening? Where might you need to create more stability? Practicing ahimsa, we don't twist too far. We're studying our own fabric. Come back to center. Lift the back heel, hands to your props, step back plank. Lower to the knees and inhale your cow. Pause for a few breaths in cow, creating space. That might mean tractioning hips away from shoulders. And then exhale, come into your hissing cat position and breathe into the low back and take your sit bones back towards your heels. Fluid breath into the fabric. And then come back up, roll into your downward dog. Knees towards the armpits. Lengthen the neutral curves of your spine, lifting your head above your arms. Take the femur bones back in the hip socket. Create space. There's no pinching in the front of the hip, and float one leg up behind you. You can stay here, or you can exhale, floating the shoulders forward over the wrists, the knee under the body. And inhale, take the foot back. And exhale, float forward. And inhale back, building upper body and core strength, even as we stretch and strengthen the fascial web. Release the lifting foot and lift the other side. And exhale and inhale. Working through a spanda, a pulsation in the body to move the prana. Let the lifted foot land, and bending the knees in towards the armpits, find that length in the spine. And step your feet forward, heels under sit bones. Exhale, Utkatasana, fierce pose. Inhale, space between the vertebrae. Exhale, twist in one direction. Inhale to center. Exhale, twist towards the other side. Can the lower body stabilize you? But even as the knees stay forward over the second metatarsals and the four corners of the feet ground, can you feel the fabric inside the legs responding to the twist? The fabric in the buttocks and the abdomen and the back. And the shoulders, the neck and the jaw. Come back to center and release your arms and let them swing. Feel how swinging the arms shifts the weight, shifts and pulls through the fabric. There are like 15 wild turkeys in my yard right now. Inhale, let your arms float up. Interlace your fingers, thumbs to the base of the skull, elbows lift. Lift the skull, rest it back in your hands. Keep your pubic bone and tailbone aligned, and breathe space between each vertebrae up the length of your spine. This may take hugging in the banks of the river, rooting your feet more with more strength. You can release the arms and lengthen out through each finger. Three-dimensional breath. And then exhale. Release. Fluid breath in Tadasana. Closing the eyes on the front of your head, look out the eyes behind you. Let the head float up off the spine. Let each vertebrae float one off the other. Now, standing here, grounded, make sure one foot is spread, solid, and lift to the other toe. Float your arms to whatever height you'd like for Vrksasana. And you can turn your knee out and kickstand, or bring your foot to your calf, or bring it to your inner thigh. Fluid breath, whatever you choose. Let your arm bones circle. Create space around the head of the arm bones. And then let them settle spaciously in the web. See if you can gently lift the navel ring, the low rib ring, the chest ring, the skull. And let your arms blow in the breeze. And let the front knee come forward. And let it lift and straighten if you like. Now you can stay here, or let your foot come down, your hands come down, and float forward Hands as wings into Virabhadrasana 3. Remember, your pelvis is lifted up off the standing femur bone. There's space between all the bones. This is going to take stabilizing with your myofascia. And float back up. Fluid breath in mountain pose. Feel how doing one side changes the fabric. Open the next foot and lift to the toe. Turn the knee out. Find the banks of your river. Find where you're going to stabilize without over tightening. And then draw your foot into your chosen position. And float your tree branches. Float the twigs of your hands and let the fingers move. Let the wrists circle. Can you release this myofascial tissue? Let the forearm fascia become watery. You can stay here experimenting in tree or bring the knee forward. Find the banks of your river, strong hips if you want to straighten that front leg. Keep the heart lifting. Keep space in the waistline. You can stay here or release the arms, take the foot through, and tilt over into your Virabhadrasana 3. Fluid breath around the bones. And float back up to standing. Mountain pose. Fluid, three-dimensional breath. No bones pinching into any other bones. Breathe space. And then reach for one of your blocks and put it outside of your left foot and a little bit forward up the pinky toe side for Garuda Asana Eagle Pose. And let's go through our crane practice first. Exhaling, let your wings come down, bend your standing knee, inhaling. Maybe you lift to the toe of the front foot, maybe you lift the foot off the floor. And really try to feel for the limbs floating. I think this could be so healing for people with shoulder issues as we begin to find space in the joint and where we may have inhibited that space. I think it may be really good for people with arthritis in the hands. Let the limbs float. It's a little more work in the hips because you're utilizing your front hip flexors, but try not to jack the lifting leg hip up towards your armpit. Just let the femur bone move fluidly in the socket. And then inhale, the lifting foot over so the toes step onto the block. Bend the knees and allow the left arm to come over the right and either bring your hands back to back or wrap the elbows and bring the hands palm to palm. Come back to your three-dimensional breath. Balancing and harmonizing the tissue from the inside. You may be able to begin to take the weight off your foot on the block. Some of you may wrap the foot. But wherever you go to, create space and integrity in the myofascial web. This is the practice of svadhyaya, self-study. Exhale, release your elbows in towards your belly and release the arms and let them float up and land. Mountain pose. Feel into the work your standing side leg did. Put your weight on the other leg, lift to that toe. Lift that knee and just circle that hip for a second. Let go of that work we just did in the standing hip. And then take your block to the other side. As you're ready, inhale and exhale, fluidly flying with the migrating birds. Fluid breath. Hands are floating, fingers each floating, each unique bone in the fingers floating. Let your awareness rest in the hands for a few breaths. Feel for prana moving there. And then inhale, lift the floating leg over, stepping onto the block, perhaps bending the standing knee. You can hug the legs together, you can press them into each other, but stay secure on the four corners of the standing foot and bring the right arm over the left. Your hands into position and rest into your eagle high up in the tree. Study the inner landscape from your perch. The ocean inside your body. You can begin to play with taking the weight off the foot on the block. And bring elbows in towards waistline. Float the arms, lift and land. Mountain pose. Let the breath lift and expand your ribs. Let it stretch down into your abdomen and low back. And then soft knees, let your arms swing around your torso. Let go in the spine. Really let the bones float away from the shoulders. Every bone, try to feel into different finger bones, different palm bones. Feel into your forearms and your elbows and the humerus pulling away from the shoulder. And then feel into the spine and the ribs and the tissue all around them. Into what's happening in the abdomen and the lungs. And soften the twisting until you slowly come back to stillness. Eyes on the front of the head closed. Open the eyes on the back of your head. And gently root to rise. And then breathe sky between each vertebrae. It's here in Tadasana we can often feel where the fabric is pulling. Okay, going to come to the floor. Please bring your bolster, a blanket. If you'd like to, you can bring your fascial release balls and your eye pillow for Shavasana, your yoga strap. And as you're ready, lie yourself down. Where's my yoga block? Oh, there it is. Come into constructive rest. Heels aligned with sit bones, nod, pelvis towards earth, tailbone towards earth, tailbone towards sky. Rest your hands on your abdomen as you nod the pelvis. Actually, let's put one hand between the hip bones and one hand up by the ribs. Find your breath and feel for the movement of the fascia as you rock the pelvis. See if you can notice any part that isn't affected. Really, I'm so excited about this new way of viewing the body. It seems right to me. It feels holistic. It's like, yes, now they're getting it. All this kind of origin and insertion, and this muscle moves this bone, it never really worked. And yet, it's still what they're requiring us to teach in yoga teacher training. I actually wrote about that. My elective hours are fascia. Now come into your neutral curves. Pause with your three-dimensional breath. And with as little effort as possible, bring your right ankle over your left knee. Let the right knee open. Flex and point the right foot. And then flex it. See how you can stabilize the knee by flexing the foot. And exhale, float your legs in towards your chest. Some of you may just rest the left foot on a block. Some of you will draw the legs in. And then try to keep reasonably steady along the spine and rock the hips. You'll notice that there's movement all the way up into the head. But we just don't want to kind of turn from side to side. Let there be a kind of pulling and twisting of the fabric as you rock the hips. And then pause wherever the stretch is right for you. Make sure you're not stretching to the point of hardening tissue. And come into the fluid breath. Relaxing into the stretch on the exhales. Inhale, kind of a stretch to the tissue. And the inhale can stretch the tissue in the chest cavity as well as the hip and the abdomen. Remember that this part of the practice isn't just about stretching the hip. That breath work will help us move energy in the abdomen. Perhaps fill different alveoli than we usually fill. And then exhale, release the left foot and then the right foot. Rock your knees together and apart. Feel the difference side to side. And then come to neutral and bring the left ankle over the right knee. Let the left knee open. Now here for a moment, nod your tail towards earth, tail towards sky. What does that tell you about your two hips? And then come to neutral, and as you're ready, exhale. Draw the legs in any degree. Remember, the left foot is flexed to protect the left knee. This is a pretty complicated opener for hip and knee. It gets into those deep hip muscles though, and we need those to not over tighten. Fluid breath. Three-dimensional breath, moving the abdomen, stretching open lung tissue, relaxing the body, the bones. And release the right foot and then the left. Bring the soles of the feet together and allow the knees to open. Bring the arms open into your cactus position around the head and come into goddess pose. Three-dimensional breath. The practice of svadhyaya, self-study. Where is the fabric tight in your matrix? Where may it be too loose? Nod your head yes. Nod your head no. What tissue is affected in the movement? Come back to center, bring the knees in and take your pillow out from under the head. Bring your bolster in underneath your pelvis. If you don't have a bolster, you could use a block or a folded blanket. Make sure the bolster's under your sacrum, not your lumbar curve. And float one knee in towards the chest and then the other. Circle the knees apart and back together again. Invite a fluidity to the hips. As the knees circle, reach the arms skyward and let the hands begin to circle with the knees. Let the humerus bones circle in the shoulder. Let the finger bones relax towards the palms. Take your circles the other way. Remember, there's a benefit to lifting the limbs because it allows the lymph to flow back towards the lymph nodes. If you'd like to, you can lift the legs long as you circle. Feel into where the fabric stretches. And then let your hands rest on the right shin as you draw the right knee in and lengthen the left leg out over your bolster. Fluid breath. Take the right knee out to the side and the left foot out to the side, stretching gently through the pelvis. Deep breath, deep attention into the body. Now bring the right knee back in, left foot back in. Take the right knee in the left hand and bring the left knee over the body, whatever degree feels right to you, stretching the hip. So you're coming into a twist, bringing the right leg over towards the left side. Fluid breath. And come back in towards center. Bring the left knee into the chest. Reach the right foot towards the sky and lengthen it out, taking the femur bone away from the pelvis as you rest the foot towards the floor. Breathe space between your lumbar vertebrae. Take the left knee out to the left side, the right foot out to the right. Breathe across the bolster. Notice, were there any catches in your myofascial fabric? Breathe into those areas, invite them to open. Exhale, the left knee back to center and take the left knee across to the right. You can lift the left hip off the bolster if twisting is okay in your body. Fluid breath, resting the left arm back behind you. Can you relax into whatever stretch you found on the exhales? And inhale back to center. Draw the right foot in and release the left foot over the bolster, coming into your supported bridge pose. Come into somatic walking on your bolster. Fluid breath into the hips, into the pelvis, into the abdomen, down the legs. Let your arms and head relax and notice, does moving the hips radiate up to movement in the head? Come to center and lengthen one leg over the bolster. If that feels okay and you'd like to lengthen both legs, go ahead and do so. You can stay in bridge as well, or you could lift your feet towards the sky if that doesn't feel good for your lumbar spine. Fluid breath, opening the psoas pathway. Feel in behind your navel, next to the sides of the spine. Feel down along the spine, through the pelvis to the inner thighs. If there's any tightness there, you're stretching your psoas. Deep and fluid breath can help you release tension from this major muscle in the body. This muscle that can hold emotional tension and past trauma. Fluid breath. Deep into the pelvis, deep into the tissue along the spine. Three-dimensional breath. Let the inhale be what's stretching the fabric inside the pelvis, connecting to your leg bones, connecting to your vertebrae. If you get antsy while we're stretching, notice that. Your brain wants to move. Can you rest into the stretch? And draw your feet back in and lift your pelvis off the bolster and press the bolster down toward your feet. Step your feet onto the bolster. Bring your arms into robot arms and inhale. Float your pelvis skyward in a bridge and lift the left pelvis and then the right pelvis and feel for the rippling action of this gentle twist down the legs into the feet, up the spine into the shoulders and arms, neck and head. It's all connected. It's all made of water. Now lift the pelvis straight up towards the sky and pulse the pelvis skyward. Where do you feel limitation? Where do you feel strength? Where do you feel stretch? Where do you feel work? And then lifting as high as is comfortable, relax your glutes, relax your shoulders, relax along the spine and roll down one vertebrae at a time. If that doesn't feel right to your spine, then just lower the hips on an exhale and lift them on an inhale. Come to neutral lumbar curve and then exhale, tailbone towards sky. Peel the spine off the floor back up towards your shoulders. Take an inhale and exhale, roll down again. In this motion, we're borrowing from Pilates and his idea that we wanted each vertebrae to move independently from the other to create that tiger-like fluidity. So feel for creating fluidity along the spine. And you can do that even as you lower and lift the pelvis by breathing space between the vertebrae. Fluid breath. Fluid movement. Now, if you have yoga therapy balls near you, as you roll down this next time, you can place the yoga therapy balls to the side of your sacrum. And you can roll tailbone towards earth and tailbone towards sky. And you can move the balls out towards your outer hips, releasing these deep hip fascial tightness that can happen around the deep six muscles of the hip, around the glutes, releasing fascial tension. Feel free to pause wherever it feels right to you. If you want a little more pressure on the balls, you can lift the knees in towards the chest, and you can rock your knees side to side. Fluid breath. Inviting your consciousness of tightness inside the embroidery of your body, your unique shape, your one unique expression in the world. I love in Kashmir Shaivism how they say that consciousness wants to experience itself in many, many ways. So each unique embodiment is a new way to experience consciousness. The way you experience consciousness and I experience consciousness is different. But we all contribute to the universal consciousness. Now you can release off your myofascial balls and nod tailbone towards earth and sky again, and hug your knees in towards your chest. And if it's okay for your neck, lift your forehead towards your knees and tighten your feet, tighten your calves, all the muscles of your legs, your hands, your arms, your belly, your chest, your back, your neck, your face, all the fascia links up your skull. Tighten everything you can, even internally. And then exhale. Relax and drape your legs over the bolster. And draw in a blanket if you feel chilled, and your eye pillow if you have one. And let yourself unfold into Shavasana. For some reason in this class, I've been thinking of my grandmother and her embroidery. These little kind of doily cloths that would sit out on tabletops. Imagine that that can become three-dimensional, and it can be unique to your own body. Let each one of those sutras, those strands of the embroidery, relax now. Release into the hug of gravity. Let the bone spacers relax. Scan the face, the neck, and the shoulders for more tissue you could release. Scan down the length of the arms into the hands. Scan down through the rib cage into the spine. Can you relax your diaphragm? The abdominal muscles. the psoas, the low back and buttocks. Relax down your legs and into your feet. As you rest here, see if you can feel the space inside your joints. Relax and allow for more space. And finally, let go thoughts and see if you can rest in santosha, contentment. And gently begin to move fingers and toes, wrists and ankles. And gently step your feet in and reach your hands and feet for the sky. And shake your legs and your arms and your hands and your feet and try to let go any residual tension there. Feel for it. We do want biotensegrity. We do want tension. We just don't want it to pull us askew. And then gently stretch in whatever way your body calls for. And come up to a comfortable seat. As you get comfortable, make sure the base at your sit bones is wide so that you can rest the head over the heart, over the pelvis. And close the eyes on the front of your head and open the eyes on the back of your head. This continual practice of yoga asks us to be willing to see from different perspectives. Let's see if this week we can see through our fascia how we experience the world. Let's inhale our hands to our hearts. Thank you for your practice. Namaste. And thank you.